I still remember the day my acceptance letter arrived. It was a crisp autumn afternoon in Boston, and the maple trees outside our apartment were ablaze with orange and red. I had applied to 7 universities, but only one mattered. When I saw the Massachusetts Institute of Technology logo in the corner of the envelope, my hands trembled so badly I could barely tear it open. Congratulations, Bryn Westbrook. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I had done it. Despite everything my father had said for the past 22 years, I had done it. Growing up in the shadow of James Westbrook wasn't easy. A renowned structural engineer with projects spanning 3 continents, my father cast a long shadow. From the moment I showed interest in science and mathematics, it became a competition I never asked for. Every test, every science fair, every academic achievement was met with the same response. Good, but not good enough. My mother, Ellen, tried her best to buffer his criticism. "He just wants you to succeed, honey," she would say after he'd torn apart my A- paper, pointing out every minor error as if they were fatal flaws in a bridge design. But even she couldn't fully shield me from his expectations. "The Westbrook name means something in this field," he would remind me. "Mediocrity isn't an option." When I announced I wanted to study aerospace engineering, his laugh still rings in my ears. "Aerospace? With your math scores? You'll wash out in a semester." He shook his head, not even looking up from his blueprints. "You'll disappoint yourself. And more importantly, you'll disappoint me." But here I was, acceptance letter in hand, defying his prediction before I'd even begun. I called my best friend Zoe first. "I got in! MIT said yes!" I practically screamed into the phone. "Of course they did! You absolute genius!" Zoe's voice crackled with excitement. "We're celebrating tonight." No arguments. I didn't tell my parents right away. Mom would be thrilled, but Dad, I needed time to prepare for his response. I tucked the letter into my journal and went to my part-time job at the local bookstore, floating through my shift like I was walking on clouds. That evening, I placed the acceptance letter on the dinner table between the salt and pepper shakers. Mom noticed it immediately. "Bryn, what's this?" She picked it up, eyes widening as she read. "James! James, look at this!" My father glanced up from his plate, annoyance flashing across his face at the interruption. He took the letter, his expression unreadable as he scanned the contents. "MIT." He said the name flatly, without inflection. "Engineering physics with a focus on aerospace applications." I nodded, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "It's preliminary acceptance," he said, placing the letter back on the table. "Don't celebrate yet. The first semester weeds out the dreamers from the doers." Mom's face fell. "James, for heaven's sake, this is wonderful news. Bryn worked incredibly hard for this, and she'll need to work twice as hard to stay there." He returned to his dinner. "Remember your cousin Michael? Got into Princeton, dropped out after 4 months? Some people just aren't cut out for elite education." That night, I lay in bed staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck on my ceiling when I was 12. They were childish now, but I'd never taken them down. Those stars represented everything I wanted to reach for. Everything my father said was beyond my grasp. I made a silent promise to myself then. I would not only survive MIT, I would thrive there. And one day, my father would have to acknowledge that I wasn't the disappointment he'd always expected me to be. My first semester was exactly as brutal as my father predicted. The workload was crushing, the pace relentless. I spent countless nights in the library, fueled by coffee and determination. My roommate, Mackenzie, a computer science major from Seattle, would sometimes force me to take breaks. "You're going to burn out before midterms if you keep this up," she warned, dragging me to a party at the adjacent dorm. I went reluctantly, constantly checking my phone for the time, anxious to get back to my problem sets. When midterm results were posted, I ranked in the top 15% of my class. I called home, excited to share the news. "That's nice, dear," my mother said. "Your father's not home, but I'll tell him." "Don't bother," I replied, trying to keep the bitterness from my voice. "It's just midterms." But I wanted him to know. I wanted him to be wrong about me. The first time I really faltered was during a thermodynamics project. I had miscalculated a critical component, and my professor didn't hesitate to point out the error in front of the entire class. I felt the hot flush of shame crawl up my neck as 30 pairs of eyes turned toward me. My father's voice echoed in my head. "This is why you don't belong there." That night, I called Zoe in tears. "I'm not cut out for this," I sobbed. "Maybe Dad was right." "Stop it right now," Zoe's voice was firm. "One mistake doesn't define you. Would you let anyone else talk to you the way your father does? The way you're talking to yourself right now?" She was right. I wouldn't. I dried my tears, recalculated my project, and submitted a flawless revision. My professor nodded approvingly. "Much better, Ms. Westbrook. This is the quality of work I expect from you." I finished my first year with honors, but when I showed my father my transcript, he merely glanced at it and said, "Sophomore year is when it gets challenging. We'll see." By my second year at MIT, I had found my rhythm. I joined the AeroAstro AIAA student club and discovered I had a talent for designing propulsion systems. Professor Callahan, my advanced fluid dynamics teacher, took notice. "You have an intuitive grasp of complex systems," she told me after class one day. "Have you considered applying for the NASA internship program?" The idea terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. The application process was grueling, requiring letters of recommendation, a research proposal, and a series of interviews. I worked on my application every spare moment for weeks, sleeping only 4 hours a night. When I mentioned the internship to my father during a rare weekend visit home, he frowned. "NASA is extremely competitive," he said, stirring his coffee. "They only take the best." "I know," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "That's why I'm applying." He looked at me then. Really looked at me. Perhaps for the first time since I'd left for college. "Don't set yourself up for disappointment, Bryn." "Like I've disappointed you all these years." The words slipped out before I could stop them. My mother gasped softly. We didn't talk like this in our house. We didn't acknowledge the undercurrents that shaped our family dynamics. My father's expression hardened. "I've only ever wanted you to be realistic about your capabilities. The world doesn't reward dreamers." "Maybe not," I said, rising from the table. "But sometimes dreamers prove everyone wrong." The NASA acceptance came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in April. I was selected as one of 12 students nationwide for the summer program at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California. When I called home with the news, my mother answered, "Oh, Bryn, that's incredible." Her voice bubbled with genuine pride. "Your father's on a business trip in Chicago, but I'll tell him as soon as he calls." "Thanks, Mom," I said, not bothering to hide my disappointment that he wasn't there to hear it directly. That summer at JPL changed everything. I worked alongside brilliant engineers and scientists, contributing to projects that would eventually travel millions of miles through space. My supervisor, Dr. Eleanor Reed, became the mentor I'd always wished my father could be. "You have a remarkable mind, Bryn," she told me during my final evaluation. "Your approach to the thermal regulation issue on the Mars rover prototype was innovative. We've recommended you for the extended program next summer." I returned to MIT for my junior year with a newfound confidence. My experience at NASA had shown me that I belonged in this field, regardless of what my father believed. I threw myself into my coursework with renewed vigor, taking on additional research projects, and even mentoring freshman students who were struggling with core engineering concepts. When I went home for Thanksgiving that fall, something had shifted. I no longer felt like I needed my father's approval. I had proven myself to people whose opinions actually mattered in my field. Over turkey and cranberry sauce, my father asked about my internship, his tone casual, almost disinterested. "It went well," I said, matching his detachment. "They've asked me back next summer." He nodded, a flicker of something, surprise perhaps, or reluctant respect, crossing his face before he masked it. "That's impressive." It was the closest thing to a compliment he had ever given me regarding my academic pursuits. I should have felt triumphant, but instead, I just felt tired. tired of seeking validation from someone who seemed constitutionally unable to give it. My mother beamed across the table. "We're so proud of you, honey." "Thank you, Mom," I said, emphasizing the singular. My father didn't miss it. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That night, as I was helping with the dishes, my mother handed me a worn leather notebook. "This was your father's, from his college days," she said softly. "He doesn't know I'm giving it to you." I opened it cautiously. Inside were meticulously detailed notes, calculations, and sketches, but also, in the margins, doubts, questions, struggles. My father, the infallible engineer, had been uncertain too. He was the first in his family to go to college, Mom explained. His father, your grandfather, never believed he would finish. Told him he was wasting his time, that he didn't have what it takes. The revelation stunned me. All these years, I had assumed my father's relentless pressure came from a place of arrogance, of certainty in his own superiority. I never considered it might come from his own wounds, his own battles with inadequacy. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it helped me understand it. The cycle of a father's doubt becoming the burden his daughter carried. I decided then that the cycle would end with me. Senior year arrived with a flurry of possibilities and pressures. After my second summer at JPL, I had received preliminary job offers from 3 aerospace companies contingent upon my graduation. My thesis project, a novel approach to heat shield technology for atmospheric re-entry, had attracted attention from both academic and industry circles. For the first time in my academic career, I allowed myself to believe that I might actually exceed expectations rather than just meet them. My advisor, Professor Chen, had become another crucial mentor, pushing me to publish my research findings in the Journal of Aerospace Engineering. "This could be groundbreaking work, Bryn," he said, reviewing my draft. "You're making connections that more experienced engineers have missed." I was thriving, but the closer I got to graduation, the more I thought about my father. Would any of this be enough? Would he finally see me, really see me, and the woman I had become? In February, just 3 months before graduation, my mother called with news that shifted my world on its axis. "Your father's company lost the Denver International contract," she said, her voice tight with worry. "It's significant. There will be layoffs and the reputation damage." I knew what this meant. My father's firm had been counting on this contract. It was to be the crown jewel in his portfolio, the project that would cement his legacy. "How is he?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Not good," Mom sighed. "He's not sleeping. Barely eating. I'm worried about him, Bryn." The old me would have felt a twisted satisfaction at seeing my father fail, at watching him face the kind of judgment he had so freely passed on me. But instead, I felt only concern and a strange sense of connection. For the first time, I understood the pressure he had lived with his entire career. I flew home that weekend. When I arrived, I barely recognized the man sitting at our kitchen table. My father had always been imposing, larger than life. Now he seemed diminished, gray at the temples, deep lines etched around his mouth. "You didn't need to come," he said gruffly when I entered. "Your mother shouldn't have bothered you with this." "I wanted to come," I replied, setting my bag down. "Can we talk?" He looked surprised but nodded. We walked to the neighborhood park, the same one where he had once pushed me on the swings, before expectations and disappointments had built a wall between us. The winter air was sharp, our breath forming clouds in the cold. "I read about the contract," I said finally. "The specifications were impossible. No firm could have delivered what they were asking for, not with those budget constraints." He glanced at me, eyebrows raised. "You researched it?" I nodded. The thermal expansion requirements alone would have required materials that don't exist yet, not at that price point. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "That's what I told them. They'll realize it eventually," I said. "When the next firm fails too." We walked in silence for a while, the crunch of frozen grass beneath our feet the only sound. "Your Professor Chen called me," he said abruptly. "About your thesis." I stopped walking. He did? My father nodded, not meeting my eyes. He said your work on ablative heat shields could revolutionize re-entry protocols. Said NASA's already interested in developing it further. I waited, heart pounding, for the qualification that would diminish the achievement. It didn't come. Instead, my father turned to face me, his expression more open than I had ever seen it. I never wanted you to face the kind of pressure I did, he said quietly. I thought if I showed you how hard this field could be, you'd choose something else, something easier. You thought you were protecting me, I realized aloud. I was wrong, he admitted, the words clearly difficult for him. You're stronger than I ever was. More brilliant, too, though I'm only just allowing myself to see it. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them back. 22 years of seeking validation. And here it was, delivered on a cold park bench in the wake of his professional crisis. I'm not doing this for you anymore, I told him honestly. I'm doing it because I love it. Because every problem I solve feels like unraveling the secrets of the universe. He nodded, and I saw in his eyes that he understood exactly what I meant. Perhaps he had felt the same way once, before the weight of expectations. His father's, his clients', his own, had stolen the joy from his work. I'm proud of you, Bryn, he said, the words hanging between us like something fragile and precious. I should have told you that a long time ago. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. Too many years of hurt couldn't be erased in a single conversation. But it was a beginning, a first step toward a new kind of relationship built on mutual respect rather than expectations and disappointment. When I returned to MIT, I threw myself into completing my thesis with renewed focus. Not to prove anything to my father, but to honor the passion that had driven me all along, despite his doubts, despite my own. Graduation day dawned bright and clear, the May sunshine warming the historic MIT campus. As I donned my cap and gown, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the late nights and early mornings, the failures and breakthroughs, the moments of doubt when my father's voice in my head nearly convinced me to give up. Mackenzie burst into our room, already in her regalia. Can you believe we made it? 4 years gone in a flash. I smiled, adjusting my honor cords, gold for academic excellence, blue for my research contributions. Sometimes it felt like forever. Your parents here yet? She asked, applying a final coat of mascara. They should be arriving soon. I checked my phone. No messages yet. We made our way to the assembly area, joining our fellow engineering graduates. The atmosphere was electric with excitement and nostalgia. Many of us were heading to different corners of the country, or the world, after today. I had accepted a position at Astra Dynamics, a cutting-edge aerospace firm in Colorado, where I would be joining a team developing next-generation spacecraft. As we lined up alphabetically, I scanned the crowd for my parents. The sea of faces blurred together until suddenly there they were. My mother, elegant in a blue dress that matched her eyes. And beside her, my father, standing tall in his best suit, his expression uncharacteristically soft as he caught my eye and raised his hand in greeting. The ceremony was a blur of speeches and tradition. When my name was called, Bryn Westbrook, summa cum laude, I crossed the stage with steady steps. As the dean handed me my diploma, I glanced toward the audience. My mother was crying openly, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. And my father? My father was standing, applauding, his face alight with unmistakable pride. The reception afterward was held on the great lawn. I made my way through the crowd, accepting congratulations from professors and classmates, until I reached my parents. "Oh, honey," Mom embraced me tightly. "We're so proud. So proud." When she released me, I turned to my father. For a moment, we simply looked at each other, years of complicated history hanging between us. "Congratulations, Bryn," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You proved me wrong. Thoroughly and completely wrong." He held out his hand, and in it was a small box. "What's this?" I asked, taking it cautiously. "Open it," he urged. Inside was a silver pendant in the shape of a rocket. Simple but elegant, catching the sunlight as I lifted it from the box. Your grandfather gave me a pocket watch when I graduated, my father explained. Said he was sorry for doubting me. I'm sorry too, Bryn, for not believing in you, for making you think you had to earn my pride instead of knowing you had it all along. I fastened the necklace around my throat, the rocket resting just above my heart. Thank you, I said simply. Professor Chen approached us then, his academic robes billowing in the gentle breeze. Mr. and Mrs. Westbrook, he greeted my parents warmly. You must be incredibly proud of your daughter. Her work is extraordinary. We are, my father said, and the certainty in his voice made my heart swell. She's extraordinary. Bryn has been offered a position on our advanced research team, Professor Chen continued. Part-time, while she works in industry. It's quite rare for a new graduate, but her insights on thermodynamics are too valuable to lose. My father turned to me, eyebrows raised. You didn't mention this. I just got the offer yesterday, I explained. I'm still considering it. You should accept, my father said without hesitation. Keep one foot in research. That's where the real breakthroughs happen. Later, as we walked across the campus that had been my home for 4 years, my father asked about my new job, my apartment hunt, my plans for the future. But he asked differently than he once would have, with curiosity rather than judgment, interest rather than scrutiny. You know, he said as we paused by the Charles River, watching sailboats glide across the water, I always thought I needed to prepare you for disappointment, to toughen you up for a world that rarely rewards the exceptional as they deserve. And now? I prompted when he fell silent. He smiled, the expression transforming his face, making him look younger, lighter. Now I think maybe the world needs more dreamers who refuse to accept limitations, who see possibilities where others see only obstacles. He placed his hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry it took me so long to see who you really are. As the sun began to set over MIT's iconic dome, casting long shadows across the campus, I realized that I had achieved something more significant than academic honors or prestigious job offers. I had broken a cycle, healed a wound that had been festering across generations. My father had always said I would disappoint him. Instead, I had helped him find his way back to the joy and wonder that had drawn him to engineering in the first place. And in doing so, I had freed myself from the need for his approval, just in time to genuinely receive it. The rocket pendant gleamed against my graduation gown, a symbol not just of my achievements, but of transformation, of words eaten and pride swallowed and new beginnings forged from the ashes of old expectations. Ready to go? My mother called from a few paces ahead. My father and I exchanged a look of newfound understanding before joining her. Together, we walked toward the future. Not perfect, still learning, but finally moving in the same direction.